The ships came without warning. They appeared in Earth's sky like dark clouds, blocking out the sun over every major city. Seoul was one of the first to fall. The alien vessels fired no weapons at first. They simply waited, hovering in silence until the governments below understood the message. Resistance was pointless. Jiho remembered that day clearly. He had been working late at the engineering firm, running calculations for a new power grid design. The lights flickered, then died. Through the window he saw the massive ship overhead, its surface smooth and black like polished stone. Around him his co-workers panicked. Some ran, others cried. Jiho simply stood and watched, his mind already working through the implications. Within 3 days, Earth surrendered. The aliens called themselves Valorians, and they made their terms clear. Earth would become part of their empire. Humans would serve. Any resistance would be eliminated without mercy. The Valorian Dominion had conquered hundreds of worlds across the galaxy, and Earth was just another addition to their vast collection. The Valorians were tall beings, their skin pale blue and covered with faint patterns that glowed when they used their powers. They possessed abilities humans could barely understand. They could move objects with their minds, speak directly into someone's thoughts, and sense emotions like heat from a fire. To them, humans were primitive creatures barely worth noticing. Processing centers were established in every major city. Humans were cataloged, tested, and assigned roles based on their skills. Most were sent to labor camps or factories. The educated ones, like Jiho, were given positions in administration or maintenance. The Valorians needed workers who could keep the basic infrastructure running while they focused on more important matters. Jiho was assigned to a processing center in what used to be downtown Seoul. His job was simple. He maintained the computer systems that tracked human workers. It was boring work far below his actual abilities, but he kept quiet and did what was asked. He observed everything. He learned how Valorian technology worked. He studied their patterns, their hierarchies, their weaknesses. 6 months after the invasion, Queen Hana came to Earth. She was the supreme ruler of the Valorian Dominion, a being of immense power and authority. Her arrival was announced with great ceremony. The Valorian administrators became nervous, checking everything twice, making sure the facilities were perfect. Queen Hana was different from the other Valorians Jiho had seen. She moved with absolute confidence, her long robes flowing behind her like liquid silver. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent, missing nothing. She walked through the processing center with a small group of advisors, inspecting the human workers as if they were machines in a factory. Most humans looked away when she passed. They feared her, and with good reason. She held the power of life and death over billions. But when Queen Hana stopped in front of Jiho's workstation, he met her gaze directly. He did not bow. He did not tremble. He simply looked at her, his expression calm. "This one is different," Queen Hana said, speaking in perfect Korean. Her voice was cold but curious. "What is your name?" "Jiho," he replied. "You do not fear me." "Fear would not change anything," Jiho said simply. One of the advisors hissed in anger at his tone, but Queen Hana raised a hand to silence them. She stepped closer, her psychic presence pressing against Jiho's mind like a weight. Most humans collapsed under such pressure, but Jiho remained standing. His jaw tightened and sweat formed on his brow, but he did not look away. "Interesting," Queen Hana said, withdrawing her power. "What did you do before we arrived?" "I was an engineer. I designed power systems." "Show me your work." Jiho pulled up files on his terminal displaying some of his old projects. Queen Hana studied them in silence, her eyes moving rapidly across the screen. After a long moment, she pointed to one of the Valorian energy conduits visible through the window. "What do you think of our systems?" she asked. Jiho hesitated. This was a test and a dangerous one. But he had already drawn her attention. Lying would be pointless. "Your energy distribution is inefficient," he said carefully. "The conduits carry too much power through single channels. If one fails, entire sections lose power. A distributed network would be more stable." The advisors began to protest, but Queen Hana silenced them again. She studied Jiho with renewed interest, her head tilting slightly. "You understand our technology?" "I understand the principles. Energy follows the same rules everywhere." Queen Hana was quiet for a long time. Then she made a decision that shocked everyone in the room. "I am taking this human with me," she announced. "He will join my court on Valoria Prime." The advisors immediately objected. Humans were not permitted on the homeworld. They were too primitive, too dangerous, too unpredictable. But Queen Hana dismissed their concerns with a wave of her hand. "I wish to study this species more closely," she said. "This one shows promise. He will serve as my specimen." Jiho felt his stomach drop, but he kept his expression neutral. He had no choice in the matter. Within an hour, he was removed from the processing center and taken to a transport ship. He was given no time to say goodbye to anyone, no chance to collect his belongings. He simply left Earth, watching through a viewport as his home planet grew smaller and smaller, until it was just another blue dot among the stars. The journey to Valoria Prime took 3 days. Jiho was kept in a small cabin, guarded by Valorian soldiers who watched him constantly. They did not speak to him. They barely acknowledged his existence. He was cargo, nothing more. When they arrived, Jiho saw Valoria Prime for the first time. It was a massive world, larger than Earth, covered with gleaming cities that stretched from horizon to horizon. The palace complex where Queen Hana ruled was at the center of the largest city, a structure so enormous it could be seen from orbit. Jiho was taken directly to the palace and assigned quarters in a section reserved for servants. His room was small but comfortable, with a window that looked out over the city. He was given simple clothing and told to wait. That night, as he stood by the window watching alien ships move through the sky, Jiho wondered if he would ever see Earth again. He thought about his family, his friends, everyone he had left behind. But he did not allow himself to despair. He was alive. He was inside the heart of the enemy's empire. And if there was even the smallest chance to make a difference, he would find it. Queen Hana had chosen him for reasons he did not yet understand. But Jiho knew one thing with certainty. She had made a mistake bringing him here, because now he would learn everything he could about the Valorian Dominion, and someday somehow he would use that knowledge. The game had just begun. The palace was a maze of corridors and chambers, each more grand than the last. Jiho spent his first week simply trying to understand the layout. He was given tasks that seemed designed to test him: organizing data files, repairing minor equipment failures, translating human documents into Valorian script. Nothing too important, but enough to keep him busy. The other servants avoided him. Most were Valorians from lower castes, assigned to menial work because they lacked strong psychic abilities. They viewed Jiho with suspicion and disgust. A human walking the halls of the royal palace was an insult to everything they believed about their superiority. Jiho ignored their stares and focused on his work. He learned quickly that the palace operated on strict hierarchy. Everyone had their place, and stepping outside that place brought swift punishment. The higher caste Valorians could use their psychic powers freely, while the lower castes were forbidden from doing so, except in designated areas. Jiho, as a human, was beneath even the lowest caste. He existed in the palace only because Queen Hana willed it. She summoned him on his 10th day. 2 guards came to his quarters and escorted him through the palace to her private chambers. The room was vast, with walls of transparent crystal that looked out over the city. Queen Hana sat on a raised platform reviewing holographic displays that floated in the air around her. "Sit," she commanded, gesturing to a cushion on the floor below her. Jiho sat, keeping his back straight and his expression neutral. Queen Hana dismissed the displays with a wave of her hand and focused her full attention on him. "Tell me about your world," she said. "Not the statistics I can read in reports. Tell me what it means to be human." Jiho considered the question carefully. This was not idle curiosity. Queen Hana was searching for something, though he could not yet understand what. "Humans survive," he said finally. "Our world has tried to kill us in every way possible. Ice ages, plagues, wars, natural disasters. We should have gone extinct 100 times over. But we adapt, we endure. We find ways to keep going even when everything seems hopeless." "You make it sound noble," Queen Hana said. "But from what I have seen, humans are weak. Your technology was primitive. Your governments could not even agree on how to respond to our arrival. You surrendered in less than a week." "Because we are not stupid," Jiho replied. "You could have destroyed every city on Earth from orbit. Fighting would have meant extinction. We surrendered because we chose to survive." Queen Hana leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing. "And now? Do you plan to survive by serving me?" "I plan to survive by learning," Jiho said. "Understanding. Waiting for opportunities." A small smile crossed Queen Hana's face. It was not a warm expression. "At least you are honest. Most conquered species lie to themselves about their situation. They pretend they still have power, still have choices. You accept reality. They talked for over an hour. Queen Hana asked about Earth's history, its cultures, its conflicts. Jiho answered carefully, revealing some truths while holding back others. He began to understand that Queen Hana was not just studying humanity. She was studying him specifically, trying to understand what made him different from other humans she had encountered. As the conversation continued, Jiho noticed something strange. Queen Hana seemed tired. Her questions became sharper, more aggressive, as if she was frustrated about something that had nothing to do with him. Finally, she dismissed him with a wave of her hand. "You may go. I will summon you again when I have more questions." Jiho bowed slightly and left, but as he walked back to his quarters, he could not shake the feeling that Queen Hana was not as secure in her power as she appeared. Over the following weeks, the summoning became more frequent. Sometimes Queen Hana asked about human philosophy or art. Other times she wanted his opinion on technical matters, testing his knowledge against Valorian standards. Slowly, Jiho began to piece together the truth. Queen Hana's empire was fracturing. The Valorian dominion had grown too large, conquering too many worlds too quickly. Rebellions were common on distant planets. The military was stretched thin. And within the palace itself, rival factions competed for influence and power. The most dangerous was General Taemin. He commanded a large portion of the military and had support among the noble houses. Taemin believed that Queen Hana had become weak, that her interest in conquered species was a sign of declining Valorian purity. He wanted to restore the empire to its old ways, when Valorians crushed all opposition without mercy or hesitation. Jiho learned all this through careful observation. He listened to conversations in the hallways. He watched how servants reacted when certain names were mentioned. He studied the body language of the guards and administrators. Nobody told him directly, but he pieced the puzzle together. Then, without warning, the palace exploded into chaos. It happened during the night cycle. Jiho was in his quarters, reviewing technical documents on a data pad when the alarms began to sound. The walls shook from distant explosions. Through his window, he saw fire rising from other sections of the palace complex. He moved to his door, but it would not open. The security systems had locked down everything. He was trapped. For nearly an hour, Jiho could only listen to the sounds of fighting. Energy weapons fired in bursts. People screamed. Something massive crashed through a nearby wall, shaking his entire room. Then suddenly his door opened. A Valorian warrior stood in the doorway. She was tall and muscular, wearing combat armor that was scorched and damaged. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. "You," she said, pointing at Jiho. "The queen wants you. Now." Jiho did not argue. He followed her through the palace, stepping over debris and bodies. The warrior moved with deadly efficiency, her weapon raised, checking every corner. Her name was Mina, one of Queen Hana's personal guards. They reached the throne room to find it in ruins. Half the ceiling had collapsed. Dead guards lay everywhere, both loyal forces and rebels. Queen Hana stood in the center of the room, surrounded by a handful of surviving protectors. Her silver robes were torn and burned. Blood stained her arms. But her eyes still burned with defiant power. Standing opposite her was General Taemin. He wore full battle armor, and his psychic aura filled the room like a thunderstorm. Behind him stood at least 20 soldiers, all with weapons trained on the queen. "It is over, Hana," Taemin said, using her name without the title of respect. "Your reign has made us weak. You waste time studying inferior species while our empire crumbles. I will restore what you have destroyed." "You will die trying," Queen Hana replied coldly. Taemin laughed. "You cannot fight all of us. But before I end this, I want you to watch your pet human die. I want you to see how pathetic your fascination with lesser beings truly is." He turned his attention to Jiho, who stood frozen near the entrance with Mina. Taemin's eyes glowed with psychic power. "Let me demonstrate how we deal with vermin," Taemin said. The psychic attack hit Jiho like a hammer to the skull. It felt as if his brain was being crushed from the inside. He fell to his knees, unable to breathe, unable to think. The pain was beyond anything he had ever experienced. He could feel Taemin's consciousness invading his mind, tearing through his thoughts, searching for his greatest fears to use against him. But then something changed. Deep inside Jiho, something woke up. It started as a warmth in his chest, then grew hotter, spreading through his body like fire through dry wood. The pain from Taemin's attack suddenly felt distant, pushed away by this new sensation. Power, raw and primal. It surged through Jiho's veins, his bones, his very cells. He did not understand what was happening, but his body knew. This was something that had always been there, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Jiho opened his eyes and stood up. Energy crackled around his hands, blue-white and blindingly bright. Taemin's psychic attack shattered against this new force like waves against a cliff. "What is this?" Taemin shouted, genuine shock in his voice. Jiho did not answer. He could not have explained if he tried. He simply acted on instinct. He thrust his hands forward and the energy exploded outward in a massive shockwave. It swept across the throne room, throwing Taemin and his soldiers backward. Equipment exploded. The remaining walls cracked. The floor beneath Jiho's feet scorched black. When the light faded, Jiho collapsed. The energy drained from him as quickly as it had appeared, leaving him weak and trembling. But the damage was done. Taemin's forces were scattered, many unconscious. The general himself was on his hands and knees, his armor cracked and smoking. Queen Hana stared at Jiho with an expression he could not read. It was not quite fear, not quite wonder. It was something else entirely. Taemin struggled to his feet, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. "Impossible," he hissed. "Humans are weak. They have no power." But he was already retreating, pulling his surviving soldiers with him. The attack had failed. Whatever advantage he thought he had was gone. As Taemin fled, Queen Hana walked slowly toward Jiho. She knelt beside him, studying his face. "What are you?" she whispered. Jiho had no answer, because he truly did not know. Jiho woke in a medical bay, his body aching in ways he had never experienced before. Every muscle felt bruised. His head pounded with a dull, persistent pain. When he tried to sit up, gentle hands pushed him back down. "Stay still," a voice said. It was Mina, the warrior who had brought him to the throne room. She stood beside his bed, her expression stern but not unkind. "Your body went through something extreme. The medical scanners do not even understand what happened to you." "How long was I unconscious?" Jiho asked. 2 days. "Queen Hana has been waiting for you to wake up." Jiho looked around the medical bay. It was empty except for them. Through the windows, he could see construction crews repairing damage to the palace. The attack had left scars, but the structure still stood. "Taemin," Jiho asked, escaped. "He fled the planet with his remaining forces, but he will return." Mina's jaw tightened. He has too much support among the military to give up now. This was just his first attempt. "Then why are you keeping me alive?" "I am a liability," Mina snorted. "You are the opposite of a liability. You destroyed half of Taemin's assault force with one burst of energy. Queen Hana believes you might be the key to saving her throne." She paused, studying him. "I'm not convinced. But I follow her orders." Queen Hana arrived an hour later. She dismissed Mina and the medical staff, leaving herself alone with Jiho. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes, but her posture remained regal and commanding. "Can you walk?" she asked. "I think so." "Good. Come with me." She led him through the palace to a section he had never seen before. The corridors here were older, carved from dark stone instead of the modern metal and crystal of the main sections. They descended several levels until they reached a massive chamber that looked like a library. Shelves stretched up to a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. Each shelf held ancient texts, data crystals, and objects Jiho could not identify. "This is the Archive of Lost Knowledge," Queen Hana explained. "It contains information about every species the Dominion has ever encountered. Some of this knowledge dates back thousands of years, from before even my ancestors established our empire." She moved to a specific shelf and retrieved a crystalline object. When she activated it, holographic text appeared in the air, written in a language Jiho had never seen. "After what happened in the throne room, I searched through every record we have," Queen Hana continued. "I found references to something called resonance. It is an energy manipulation ability that appears in certain species under specific evolutionary conditions, species that survived through constant conflict, constant adaptation, constant stress." Jiho felt a chill run down his spine. "You are saying humans have this ability?" "Some humans, perhaps. The records are incomplete. But the description matches what I witnessed. Resonance is different from our psychic powers. It is not mental. It is physical, tied to the body's own energy systems. It is raw and unpredictable, but incredibly powerful." Queen Hana turned to face him directly. "Taemin will come back with greater force. My loyal troops are outnumbered. Without something to tip the balance, I will lose this war, And when I lose, every reform I have tried to implement will be destroyed. The Empire will return to its most brutal practices. And you want me to be your weapon? Jiho said quietly. I want you to be more than that. I want you to learn to control this power, master it. Because if you cannot, it will kill you the next time it emerges. She paused. And yes, I need your help to survive. But in return, I offer you something no other human has. The chance to change your species' fate within the Dominion. Jiho considered her words. He did not trust Queen Hana completely. She was still the ruler who had conquered Earth. But he also recognized the truth in what she said. If she fell, someone worse would take her place. And if he had this power, he needed to understand it before it destroyed him. What do I need to do?
He asked. Train, Queen Hana said simply.
Mina will teach you combat. I will teach you control. And together we will see if a human can truly master resonance. The training began the next day. Mina took Jiho to a practice arena deep within the palace. It was a large circular space with reinforced walls designed to contain explosive energy discharges. Weapons of various types lined the walls. Mina handed Jiho a practice blade. Before you can control your power, you need to survive long enough to use it. That means learning to fight. For the next several hours, Mina put Jiho through brutal drills. She moved with lethal grace, striking at him from every angle while shouting instructions. Block, dodge, counter, move your feet. Keep your balance. Jiho was quickly covered in bruises, but Mina showed no mercy. In real combat, your enemy will not wait for you to unleash your resonance, she said, sweeping his legs out from under him. You need to be able to fight even without your power. When Mina finally called a halt, Jiho could barely stand. But he had learned. His body was beginning to remember the movements, to react without conscious thought. The second part of his training was with Queen Hana. She met him in a meditation chamber, a small room with walls that absorbed all sound. She sat across from him, her eyes closed, her breathing slow and steady. Resonance is tied to emotion, she explained. Human emotion, which is stronger and more volatile than what most species experience. In the throne room, your power emerged because you were facing death. But you cannot rely on extreme situations to trigger it. You must learn to touch that power deliberately. How? Jiho asked. By understanding yourself, your fears, your anger, your determination. The energy is already inside you. You simply need to find the path to it. They spent hours in meditation. Queen Hana guided him through exercises that forced him to confront his memories. The day Earth fell, the moment he was taken from his home, the sight of his planet disappearing behind him. Each memory brought pain, but also something else. A spark of heat in his chest, like embers waiting to catch fire. Do not force it, Queen Hana said softly. Let it flow naturally, but Jiho struggled. The power that had exploded from him in the throne room felt distant now, locked away somewhere he could not reach. He grew frustrated, which only made it harder. This is not working, he said after another failed attempt. It has been 2 days, Queen Hana replied calmly. Valorians spend years learning to control their psychic abilities. Did you think mastering resonance would be instant? Jiho wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. So he continued. Every morning, brutal combat training with Mina. Every evening, meditation with Queen Hana. His body grew stronger. His mind grew calmer. But the resonance remained just out of reach. Then on the 8th day, something changed. Mina was sparring with him, moving faster than before, pushing him harder. Jiho was exhausted, his reactions slowing. Mina saw an opening and moved in for a strike that would have knocked him unconscious. But Jiho felt it coming. Not with his eyes or his mind, with something deeper. He felt the energy around Mina's body, the way she moved through space. And without thinking, he tapped into his own energy. Not the explosive burst from before, but something gentler. A pulse that traveled through his muscles, speeding his movements, enhancing his reflexes. His hand snapped up, catching Mina's wrist before her strike connected. Blue sparks danced across his fingers. Mina froze, her eyes wide. You did it. You used resonance consciously. Jiho stared at his hand in wonder. The energy faded quickly, leaving him dizzy. But the breakthrough was real. He had touched that power deliberately. He had controlled it, even if only for a moment. Word spread quickly through the palace. The human had learned to use resonance. Queen Hana's advisors were divided. Some saw it as proof that humans were more dangerous than previously believed. Others saw it as an opportunity, a new weapon for the queen. But Jiho knew this was only the beginning. What he had done was basic, barely scratching the surface of what resonance could do. And time was running out. Reports came daily of Taman gathering forces, making alliances with noble houses that opposed Queen Hana's rule. One evening, after a particularly exhausting training session, Jiho found Queen Hana standing on a balcony overlooking the city. She looked troubled, her usual confidence cracked. Taman has secured support from 3 more military divisions, she said without looking at him. He will attack within a month, perhaps less. And I'm not certain we can hold against those numbers. Then we need to do more than defend, Jiho said. We need to attack first. Cut off his support before he is ready. Queen Hana turned to him, surprised. That would be incredibly risky. Staying here waiting for him is certain death, Jiho replied. You taught me that sometimes you have to make the dangerous choice. For the first time since he had met her, Queen Hana smiled genuinely. It transformed her face, making her look younger, less burdened. Perhaps I chose well when I brought you here, she said. As they stood together watching the alien sunset, Jiho felt the weight of what was coming. A war was beginning, and somehow, a human engineer from Earth had become one of the key pieces in a battle for the future of an entire empire. The storm was gathering, and Jiho stood at its center. The enemy fleet arrived on a clear morning. Jiho was in the training arena when the alarm sounded. Through the reinforced windows, he could see the sky darken as hundreds of warships entered orbit. They were massive vessels, bristling with weapons, each one capable of destroying a city. Mina burst into the arena, already in full combat armor. They are here. Taman brought half the military with him. The Queen has called an emergency meeting in the command center. Jiho grabbed his equipment and followed her through the palace. The corridors were filled with soldiers rushing to defensive positions. Servants fled in the opposite direction, seeking shelter in the deeper levels. The air was thick with fear and tension. The command center was a large chamber dominated by holographic displays showing the battle situation. Queen Hana stood at the center, surrounded by her remaining loyal officers. Her expression was grim but controlled. They have us surrounded, one officer reported. Orbital blockade is complete. Ground forces are landing at multiple points around the palace complex. How many? Queen Hana asked. At least 20,000 soldiers. They have heavy armor, artillery, and psychic battalions. Our forces number less than 5,000. The numbers were devastating. Even with the palace's defenses, they could not hold against such overwhelming force. Jiho could see the calculations running through everyone's minds. This was not a battle they could win through conventional means. Queen Hana turned to Jiho. Do you remember what we discussed? About attacking first, finding the enemy's weakness? Jiho nodded. Take out Taman's flagship. Without his command ship coordinating the attack, his forces will be in chaos. Exactly. But there is a problem. The flagship is heavily shielded and defended by an entire battle group. We cannot get a strike force close enough to do serious damage. Unless someone gets inside, Jiho said quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what he was suggesting. It was a suicide mission. The flagship would be filled with Taman's elite troops. Even if they somehow reached the ship's core, the odds of survival were nearly zero. I will go, Jiho said before anyone could speak. My resonance can overload their systems in ways normal weapons cannot. And I am expendable. If I fail, you lose one human. If I succeed, you win the war. You are not expendable, Queen Hana said sharply. Then more softly, but you are right. This is our only chance. She turned to Mina. Assemble a strike team, your best warriors. Get Jiho to that flagship's core no matter the cost. Mina saluted. It will be done. Within an hour they were ready. The strike team consisted of 8 Valorian warriors, including Mina and Jiho. They wore stealth armor designed to avoid sensor detection. Each warrior carried weapons optimized for close combat in confined spaces. Jiho had no weapons except the power within himself. They launched from a hidden bay beneath the palace in a small, fast transport. The ship's pilot was skilled, weaving through the battlefield at speeds that made Jiho's stomach lurch. Enemy fire streaked past them. Explosions bloomed in space like deadly flowers. But they were small and fast, harder to target than the larger military vessels. Approaching the flagship, the pilot announced. Looks like they are too busy with the main battle to notice us. Preparing to dock at the maintenance port on the ship's underside. The docking was rough, metal grinding against metal, but they connected successfully. Mina activated the override codes Queen Hana had provided, opening the airlock. "Once we are inside, there is no turning back," Mina said, checking her weapon one last time. "Stay close to me. If you fall behind, we cannot wait." They entered the flagship into a dimly lit corridor. Emergency lights flickered overhead, casting strange shadows. The team moved in tight formation, weapons ready. Jiho stayed in the center, protected on all sides. They encountered the first guards after just 2 minutes. 6 Valorian soldiers appeared around a corner, their weapons already firing. The strike team responded instantly. Energy blasts lit up the corridor. 2 of Jiho's protectors fell in the opening seconds, their armor pierced by precise shots. But the rest pushed forward, returning fire with deadly accuracy. Mina moved like a force of nature. She killed 3 enemies in rapid succession, her movements fluid and efficient. The corridor filled with smoke and the smell of burned metal. "Keep moving," she shouted. "More will come." They ran through the ship, following the path Queen Hana had mapped to the core. Alarms blared everywhere now. The enemy knew they were aboard. Soldiers poured into the corridors, trying to cut them off. The fighting was brutal and close. Jiho saw another of his protectors go down, then another. Mina took a hit to her shoulder, crying out in pain. But she did not stop. Blood ran down her arm, staining her armor, but she kept fighting. They reached a large chamber where the corridor split in 3 directions. Mina checked her tactical display. "This way," she said, pointing left. But as they started to move, a massive force of energy slammed into them from behind. The psychic attack was so strong it drove Jiho to his knees. General Taman stepped into the chamber, surrounded by his elite guard. His armor was more elaborate than before, glowing with built-in power systems. His eyes blazed with psychic energy. "Did you really think I would not anticipate this?" Taman said, his voice echoing with power. "I have been waiting for you, human. Waiting to finish what I started." The remaining strike team members, only 4 now, including Mina, formed a protective circle around Jiho. But they were exhausted, wounded, outnumbered. "Go," Mina said to Jiho. "We will hold them here." "You need to reach the core. I cannot leave you," Jiho protested. "You have to." Mina grabbed his arm, her grip fierce despite her injury. "This mission is bigger than any of us. Go. Now." She shoved him toward the corridor, then turned to face Taman with her remaining warriors. Jiho ran, hating himself for it, but knowing she was right. Behind him, he heard the sounds of fighting intensify. He ran alone through the ship's corridors. More guards appeared, but he did not stop. He reached into that well of power inside himself, letting resonance flow through his body. His movements became faster, more precise. When guards shot at him, he dodged with reflexes that seemed almost supernatural. When they tried to block his path, he released bursts of energy that threw them aside. Finally, he reached the core chamber. It was a vast space filled with pulsing conduits and energy streams. The ship's main reactor sat at the center, a sphere of contained power that lit the room with harsh white light. Control panels lined the walls, displaying incomprehensible data. Jiho approached the reactor, feeling the energy radiating from it. His resonance responded, resonating with the ship's power systems. He could feel the connections, the flow of energy throughout the entire flagship. It was like seeing the ship's nervous system laid bare. But as he prepared to release his power, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see Taman entering the chamber alone. The general's armor was scorched and damaged. Blood ran from a cut on his face. "Your warriors fought well," Taman said. "They are all dead now, and you will join them." Taman unleashed his full psychic might. The attack was overwhelming, a tidal wave of mental force that sought to crush Jiho's consciousness. Jiho screamed as pain exploded through his skull, but this time he did not fall. He had trained for this. He had learned to touch his resonance deliberately. He pulled that power up from his core, wrapping it around his mind like a shield. The psychic attack shattered against it. "Impossible," Taman snarled. "You are just a human." "That is your mistake," Jiho gasped. "You never understood what that means." He thrust his hands toward the reactor, releasing all his resonance at once. But instead of a simple destructive blast, he shaped the energy. He let it flow into the ship's systems, resonating with every conduit, every power line, every circuit. He showed the ship his memories of Earth, of humanity's struggles and survival. He flooded the system with emotion, with pain, with hope. The effect was catastrophic. The flagship systems could not handle the emotional resonance. Circuit breakers exploded, Power conduits overloaded. The psychic enhancement systems, designed to amplify Valorian mental abilities, went haywire, feeding back into every psychic-sensitive being aboard. Taman collapsed, clutching his head as his own enhanced abilities turned against him. The reactor began to destabilize, its containment fields failing. Jiho ran. He retraced his path through the ship, his legs burning with effort. Alarms screamed warnings of imminent reactor breach. He found an escape pod bay and threw himself into the nearest pod. As he sealed the hatch and launched, he looked back through the viewport. The flagship was coming apart. Explosions rippled across its hull. Escape pods and smaller craft fled in all directions. And at the center of the dying ship, Jiho saw one final massive explosion as the reactor went critical. The shockwave caught his pod, sending it spinning through space. Jiho held on as the universe wheeled around him, until finally the pod stabilizers kicked in. Through the viewport, he could see the results. The flagship was gone, reduced to debris. The enemy fleet was in chaos, ships colliding as their coordination collapsed. And from the planet below, Queen Hana's forces were launching a counterattack. Jiho closed his eyes, exhausted beyond measure. He thought of Mina and the other warriors who had given their lives to get him to the core. He thought of Earth, still suffering under Valorian. The recovery took weeks. Jiho's body had pushed beyond its limits, and even with advanced Valorian medical technology, healing was slow. He spent his days in the medical bay, watching through the windows as the palace was rebuilt and the planet returned to some semblance of normal life. Queen Hana visited him regularly. She looked different now. The constant tension that had marked her features before was gone, replaced by something that resembled peace. Or perhaps it was simply exhaustion. The war had cost her dearly, even in victory. The rebel fleet scattered after the flagship's destruction, she told him during one visit. Most of Taman's supporters have surrendered or fled to distant systems. The noble houses that backed him are now scrambling to pledge loyalty to me. She smiled slightly. Fear is a powerful motivator. And Taman? Jiho asked. Dead. His body was found in the flagship's wreckage. The ship's destruction was so complete that he had no chance of survival. She paused. Mina died as well. Her body was recovered from the corridor where she made her last stand. She took down 17 enemy soldiers before they finally overwhelmed her. Jiho looked away. He had known Mina was probably dead, but hearing it confirmed brought fresh pain. She had given her life to ensure his mission succeeded. He would carry that debt forever. I am having a monument built, Queen Hana continued, for all the warriors who fell defending the throne. Mina's name will be at the top, along with those of your strike team. They will be remembered as heroes. They were heroes, Jiho said quietly. They died so I could complete the mission. No, they died so the Empire could have a chance at something better. Queen Hana moved closer to his bed. Which brings me to why I am here. I need to ask you something, and I need your honest answer. Not as my servant, but as someone who has earned the right to speak freely. Jiho turned to look at her, curious. What should I do now? Queen Hana asked. I have won the war. My position is secure, at least for the moment. But the Empire is still broken. The conquered worlds still suffer under our rule. The same problems that led to Taman's rebellion will create more rebels in the future. I need to change things, but I do not know how. You have spent time in my court. You have seen our weaknesses. Tell me what you see, Jiho considered carefully. This was a dangerous question. One wrong answer could turn Queen Hana against him. But she was right that he had earned some measure of trust. And if there was ever a moment to speak truth to power, this was it. Your empire is built on fear, Jiho said. You conquer worlds, suppress their populations, and extract resources. You treat every other species as inferior. That creates resentment, resistance, rebellion. No matter how powerful your military is, you cannot control billions of people who hate you. And your solution? Queen Hana asked, her tone neutral. Give them a reason not to hate you. Stop treating conquered worlds as slaves. Give them representation, autonomy, a stake in the Empire's success. Make them partners instead of prisoners. Queen Hana was silent for a long time. Jiho could not read her expression. That would require dismantling everything the Dominion has built over thousands of years, she said finally. The noble houses would resist. The military would see it as weakness. I could face another rebellion, this time from all sides. Then you need to be strong enough to weather it, Jiho replied. And you need allies. People like me from the conquered worlds who can help bridge the gap between your species and theirs." Queen Hana smiled. "Are you volunteering? I am saying that if you truly want to change the Empire, you cannot do it alone. You need voices that understand both sides, and you need to prove through actions, not words, that things are different now." 3 days later, Queen Hana made a historic announcement. She appeared on every communication channel across the Empire, her message broadcast to billions. "Citizens of the Valorian Dominion," she began, "we have just emerged from a civil war that threatened to tear our empire apart. Many died, much was destroyed. But from this tragedy, I see an opportunity to build something better than what came before." She outlined a series of reforms. Conquered worlds would receive greater autonomy. Representatives from other species would be appointed to advisory councils. The harshest labor practices would be abolished. It was not freedom, not yet, but it was a beginning. "I know many of you will view these changes as weakness," Queen Hana continued, "but I have learned something during this conflict. True strength does not come from crushing those beneath you. It comes from building alliances, from earning loyalty rather than demanding it. The Valorian Dominion will remain strong, but it will also become just." The reaction was mixed. Some worlds celebrated, seeing hope for the first time since conquest. Others were skeptical, believing this was just another trick. And among the Valorian nobility there was outrage. But Queen Hana had anticipated this. She had positioned loyal troops at key locations before the announcement. Any attempts at immediate rebellion were crushed swiftly. Jiho was discharged from the medical bay a week after the announcement. He expected to return to his small quarters, but instead he was summoned to the throne room. It had been completely rebuilt, grander than before, with new walls of shimmering crystal. Queen Hana sat on her throne, formal and regal. Around her stood dozens of advisors and officials. Jiho approached and bowed, following protocol. "Jiho of Earth," Queen Hana said, her voice carrying through the chamber, "you have served the Dominion with courage and distinction. You have saved my life and helped secure the future of this empire. For these actions, I grant you a position within my government." She stood and descended from her throne, approaching Jiho directly. "You are hereby appointed Chief Advisor for Interspecies Relations. You will have authority to negotiate on behalf of conquered worlds, to advocate for their needs, and to help implement the reforms necessary to create a more stable empire. This is not an honorary position. I expect you to use this power." Jiho was stunned. This was more than he had ever hoped for. Not just survival, but actual influence. "The ability to help Earth and countless other worlds I accept," he said, "and I will do everything in my power to make these reforms succeed." "I know you will," Queen Hana said. Then, more quietly, so only he could hear, "Because if you fail, we both fail. This is our chance to prove that a different path is possible." The work began immediately. Jiho assembled a team of advisors from various conquered species. Together, they traveled to different worlds, assessing conditions, listening to grievances, proposing solutions. It was exhausting work, complicated by the fact that many people did not trust him. Some humans viewed him as a traitor for working with Queen Hana. Some Valorians viewed him as a threat to their traditional power. But slowly, progress was made. Labor camps were closed on 3 worlds and replaced with paid employment. A pilot program for local governance was established on 2 others. It was not enough, not nearly enough, but it was movement in the right direction. 6 months after his appointment, Jiho returned to Earth for the first time since his capture. He landed in Seoul, in the same processing center where Queen Hana had first selected him. The building looked different now, less like a prison and more like an administrative office. He met with human representatives, explaining the reforms and answering questions. Many were skeptical, some were hostile, but others saw the possibility of hope, the chance for things to improve. Jiho left them with a promise. He would not stop pushing for change. He would use his position to help Earth as much as he could. That evening, he stood on a rooftop overlooking the city. Seoul was quieter than he remembered, scarred by the occupation, but still standing, still alive. He thought about how far he had come from the engineer working late at night, watching alien ships arrive. Back then he had felt powerless. Now he had power, though it came with a weight he could barely carry. "Are you having doubts?" a voice asked behind him. Jiho turned to see Queen Hana. She had arrived on Earth earlier that day for official meetings, but had found time to seek him out. She joined him at the edge of the roof, looking out over the city. Not doubts, Jiho said. Just awareness of how much still needs to change. Change is slow, Queen Hana said. Especially change this fundamental. There are still noble houses plotting against me. Still military officers who believe I have gone soft. Every reform I implement creates new enemies. Do you regret it? Queen Hana was quiet for a moment. No, Taman was right about one thing. The old ways were not sustainable. The empire was rotting from within. If I had not changed course, someone would have eventually destroyed us from the outside, or we would have collapsed from internal conflicts. This way is difficult, but it is the only way forward. They stood in silence, watching the lights of Seoul flicker on as night fell. Two beings from different worlds, once enemies, now working toward something neither fully understood yet. I have received reports, Queen Hana said. There are other humans beginning to show signs of resonance. Not many, but enough to notice. Your power was not unique. It was simply the first to fully awaken. What will you do about that? Jiho asked carefully. I will offer them the same thing I offered you. Training, purpose, a chance to be part of something greater than themselves. Fear of human abilities would only create more conflict.